And I'm saying this as someone who's been on both sides of the Protestant-Catholic divide. A lot of the education on this out there is not very good. It's not and it's not happening in the home in the way it used to. It's not happening in churches the way it used to.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
You know what teenagers say all the time now? It drives me nuts. Bro. They call everybody bro.
Oh,
bro.
Anissa did that.
No, you won't
Anissa
say that.
was 7.
I don't let him say it.
So when she started, I ain't doing that, bro. I'd be like,
I'm not
sis. Sure. And that's why I started, sis, you're doing it. And one day she was like, why do you always call me sis? Because you were calling me bro and you stopped because I call you sis.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud and I am here with Paul Schaefer, Martin Cothran, and returning guest, Mr. Dustin Warren. Dustin, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
We've had you on a couple of our recent history podcasts because you are a history teacher for our high school students at Highlands Latin School.
It's true.
And Dustin, can you tell us the courses that you're teaching high school students this year?
Yeah, medieval for 10th, modern European for 11th, and U.S. history for 12th.
Got a wide range of dates and people and events there.
Yeah, like 1800 years. I'll stop before I do more math, but yeah, it's a lot.
Okay.
It's a lot.
And you work on some of our guides from Memoria Press, our history guides.
Yes, I've done one for each course at this point. Yeah,
okay.
There's another one kind of being worked on right now. So.
Okay, I've heard those get high praise. So Tanya was talking about it the other day.
People say I will take the compliment. Thank you.
And then you said something earlier about stopping at the end of the 1960s.
Yeah, usually U.S. we get to 60s, 70s.
Altogether at that point?
The motto is right. You kill Lincoln by Christmas, which I think actually we'll do this year. That's the old history teacher joke.
Yeah.
Sorry, that may have been too soon. I do love Lincoln, so I feel a little bad for saying that now. And so I'm a little ahead of what I usually am actually this year, but usually we end up with Watergate or Vietnam. So
you can be at the end of the Civil War at Christmas. And
we're starting it right now. We're just starting Civil War, yeah.
Right, but I'm surprised that you would still have January through May, and you'd only get through 100 years.
It's difficult. U.S. history is less compared to all the courses, but yet Americans love talking about themselves. So there's so much to work with.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
Yeah. So somehow it gets more complicated.
And because it's more recent, it's more documented.
Yeah,
there's a whole lot more details
documents
to get into.
Yeah. So
fascinating.
Maybe we could do 70s this year. So
we
might get there.
Okay, that's even worse. I mean, I lived through all that, right? I'm old enough to know. The 70s is when the 60s really happened.
It's when
all the bad stuff just got worse.
Yeah.
And then everyone just kind of gave up on it.
Yeah, every time I study the 70s, I get a little depressed. So,
yeah.
But the kids love that. So the worse it is, usually the more they're interested, especially the end of the year.
Because it makes them look better.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. They get that snootiness. We would have never done those things.
Oh yeah. We'll see.
Sure.
We'll see what you come up with.
Well, we've got Dustin, our history expert here, because one of the things you are great at in the classroom is helping students navigate some of the more difficult issues that you encounter. And today we've got a listener question, not so much about history proper, but about our Christian studies program and how we navigate that with students and doctrinal differences. But before we get to that, we always share what we're reading. Dustin, I'm going to let you go last in case you need to think about it. But Martin, you've got a stack of books right there.
Yeah, you got how much time you got? Actually, one of these books, another book that we are considering for the Memoria College's book prize, Paul Kingsnorth's Against the Machine, on the unmaking of humanity. And it's about modern technology, artificial intelligence, and the effect this is having on our culture and on us. And it is in a way a frightening book because and he's a former kind of lefty, and now he's somewhere, I don't know, moderate, maybe socially conservative, I don't know. And he's a Christian now. And the observations he makes, it's so compelling. And I would recommend for people who, if they're interested in finding a little bit more about Kingsnorth and the case he makes here, he did an interview with who was it? Russ Daltott at the New York Times, and you can get that online and just read the interview. And if you think that's good, then you can read the book.
Hold on. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that book, Martin?
No.
No credit to Paul.
Oh,
thank you,
yes.
Jess.
Somebody recommended this to me. I don't remember who it was, but they may be at this table. That's all I'm going to say.
The audio version of the book
That's
is
as good as
very
you're going to
good
get,
as well.
Paul.
Yeah,
So,
I haven't listened to it. But then we're always talking about books, and I'm always saying, physical books. There's something about physical books that goes above and beyond Kindle and all this other stuff. And so my oldest grandson, Soren, he comes over to the house and he's organized the boys' books library I have. And now we finished that as of this last weekend. So we're now working on my library, which is in another room in the basement. And so while he was looking through the boys' books, he found a copy of Farley Mowat's The Snow Walker. Farley Mowat was the great storyteller of Canada and a really great storyteller. He died 3 or 4 years ago here recently. And so he was looking through it and he realized that it was a signed copy. Farley Mowat's signature was. So he was really excited about that. And then when he was helping me in my library work through things, we come across this hardback copy of George Steiner's Tolstoy or Dostoevsky. This is really the best book on like this comparison between Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. George Steiner was one of the great intellectuals of the 20th century. And so I start looking at it, and all of a sudden this little piece of paper falls out of it. And it's this little letter from June 3rd, 1960. This book was published in 1959. I found out it's the first edition. And it says, "Dear Danskin, best wishes and congratulations on tomorrow's event. I am off to Europe at noon, so my wife and I will not be able to attend your wedding. But but our thoughts will be with you, and we look forward to seeing you and Odette in the fall. All the best in the world. Faithfully yours, George Steiner." Oh. So this is actually a letter from George Steiner to the guy who owned this book, because Danskin is the name in the book. And I thought, that is another cool little thing. It really excited my grandson to know that the author, we found a letter from the author he doesn't know who it is, but it's a very eminent individual. And it was right there in my library, didn't even know it. So
amazing.
Physical books.
What a treasure.
Yeah, your Kindle book wouldn't have that letter with it.
No, it wouldn't. Oh, that's the thing.
Technology.
What are people going? I mean, a book has a personality to it. It's got a history to it, but Kindles don't.
No. Kindles are great in a tree stand.
Just about anything would make sitting in a tree stand a little bit better.
You're not wrong. Paul, what are you reading?
Oh, I'm still working through 20 Years Later by Dumas, which I have to say, okay, there was a little bit of pushback when I said it's a trilogy in the comments. And if you go to the French, Dumas published 3 books in the Musketeers trilogy. In the English, it has been cut up into pieces. So if you look it up, and even if you try to look up Dumas on like English Wikipedia articles, it's all confusing because it's been published in different forms and at different lengths and stuff like that. If you go to the French, it's very clear.
Which is the original.
Which is the original.
In French.
Yeah. So
there we go.
Anyway, I'm on the second book of the trilogy, which is 20 Years Later, and then I think I'll probably go start the Viscount of I can't remember his last name. I can't remember his name. Anyway, it's Athos's son is what the third book's about.
Almost there.
Yeah, working on it.
Okay. Good winter reading.
Fun listening.
Listening. Okay.
We have a newborn foster child at our house, and I do not have time to actually be reading books.
But lots of tasks that you can just listen and.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Dustin, you reading anything?
I just started. Well, I'm kind of in a weird spot, so I try to not read a lot of history books because I do history so much. Like, so I can read. I need to read more fiction. I feel like sometimes. But I'm currently reading a biography on Frederick Douglass that I found at a book sale. New Albany has some great book sales. I've found like all kinds of great books. I think I got an Andrew Jackson book a few weeks ago, and then like a FDR one. There's just always good history books there. I'm stuck though fiction. I have like a few. I'm just not sure which one I'm gonna do. So there's like T.H. White's Arthur series. There's a fancier title for it. I've heard that's good. I've been trying to find a good copy of Cervantes.
Don Quixote.
That's it. Thank you. And then there's some other book. Steinbeck. Someone gave me a I've never read any. I think, I have a vague memory of like Black and White Dust Bowl. I think we watched maybe Grapes of Wrath, and I also have East of Eden. My brother-in-law has got a lot of books, so I borrowed a couple. So I'm not sure. If
you can commit.
Yeah, that's a cool title. Honestly, that was like, that sounds cool to read. That's shallow, but I'll stand by it.
It's a phenomenal book. It is a great
So I've been
book.
staring at some. I'm just not like, I finished one a couple weeks ago and I'm not sure which. So I'm debating.
But East of Eden, it has to be like, you have to be like, okay, on Christmas break, I'm gonna chomp on this thing because it's a tome, but it is so worth it.
And I listened to it and I remembered there being a very good reader.
Oh, okay. I've actually never done an audiobook.
Oh.
Not by like purpose. It's just like I've listened to podcasts, but I just realized because my wife does it. And I was like, I've never listened to an audiobook.
I like listening to narratives.
Narratives
stories
like that? Yeah.
On, usually fiction.
Yes.
On audio books. Because I have time in both places and I don't like reading nonfiction. I don't like, listening to nonfiction. I want to mark them, but I don't.
Well, that's what happened to me with Against the Machine. Was I was listening to it, which is ironic because it's Against the Machine, but I was using my phone and Bluetooth earbuds in the tree stand to listen to it. But then I was like, I got to go buy the book so I can actually go back through it and mark it because it is nonfiction, and I felt like it was worth it.
You were listening using a more advanced technology to a book that's against modern technology.
Correct. I understand the irony of it, but it is a great book.
Okay. Well, let's get to our listener question that we're going to turn into the topic today. This is from Pia, and she wrote us at podcast@memoriapress.com, where we love to take all of your questions. So please write us there. Pia says, I have a question about the Christian Studies curriculum by Memoria Press. There are many Christian denominations, including the Catholic Church, which is also Christian, and there are many theological and philosophical differences between them. How do you reconcile them all into one Christian Studies? Do you make students aware of those differences? Thank you for your work. She says, please excuse any language mistakes. English is my second language, but Pia, very well written. Totally understand your question, and it's a really good one. So, this is what we're going to answer today for Pia. And Paul, I want to start with a pretty basic question asking you the definition of, we say that we're ecumenical in our approach to Christian studies. People have probably heard that from our customer service reps. They may see that somewhere in print. What does that mean?
My understanding of kind of where Cheryl took her inspiration on this was C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, which we've talked a lot about on this podcast, and I have always said how it didn't blow me away, that it apparently blows a lot of people away. But there is in there the comment that, C.S. Lewis talks about the hallway, and, you shouldn't remain in the hallway, you should be in a room. But, and we recognize that, right? Like you can't be like Christian and not a part of a community, right? That's going to have its particular beliefs and things. But I think what we're trying to at least present to our students is the hallway, right? Like if we're going to present something to you and say, this is Christian belief, it's going to be Christian belief that fits in the hallway. But then from that hallway, then you're going to go into another room, which is a denomination, where those things are going to be fully fleshed out in your tradition.
Interesting. I think that's helpful. So are there core principles? It sounds like if we're just using the hallway analogy, are there core principles that we would affirm as Christian and then intentionally leave some of the doors to the family to?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always stuck on the Apostles' and Nicene creeds, right? Like those are our guiding lights. That's what we feel like everybody accepts, right? Or the vast majority accept. That's a uniting place, And what's interesting about this, I once had a person come up to me at a conference, and he said, in my generation, what united Christians was the pro-life movement. And he said, in your generation, I think it's going to be classical education. It's Christians recognizing the tradition of education that we had and that we want to make sure our children receive.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. I think that's a great observation, because I remember having been involved in the pro-life movement and noticing there were Protestants there, there were Catholics there, and so that was the place where you found there were all these ecumenical councils, and they were always like way over here doing this, or on the other side, and but in the pro-life movement there was diversity, within a kind of unity.
Yeah. It's where the hard work was being done of people coming together,
That's right.
holding hands together, saying this is common here, and we're going to fight for this.
Right. And that is exactly what is going on in the classical education movement. Is you have people, if it's a Christian school doing classical Christian education, there's a lot of diversity there in the theological traditions, but they are all they all do come together on certain central beliefs, and I think the nonfiction book expression of that is Mere Christianity, I think, and the Creed, the Nicene Creed. That's where we can all meet, and so I think as long as you are trying to fit your program within those parameters, acknowledging maybe what some of the differences are, but saying this is the central tradition right here.
I think we're careful, like in the younger years, right? What are we studying? We're studying the Bible, right? And so, in particular, when they're younger, they need the stories, right? You're not getting doctrinal division based on stories when they're young, right? Like that's what captures their imagination. That's what you're going to focus on, and so then as they get older, and this is maybe where we can have Dustin chime in, right? Like when you are teaching, because they have a good foundation of the Bible, we move into some history of Christianity studies, but you're doing that in medieval history. It's a whole lot of church history.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And
50% minimum.
Right. But you have to, you've got classrooms with Protestants and Catholics, Orthodox, and and you have to be upfront about, we might evaluate this as being a bad decision that specific church leaders made, right? Or whatever other things, right? But really, when they're in high school, helping them actually see this is the conflict, and this is why there's conflict, and this is what they're fighting for, but also being realistic that it's religion, it's politics, it's there's a whole slew of things that are going into that. It's not just that we have a theological disagreement and we do this. We have theological disagreements with economic disagreements, with political disagreements.
And the fact that we're trying to we're trying to use a Mere Christianity approach is not minimizing the importance of the differences. They are important, right? But you can't deny there are certain unifying things that bring all Christians together. And that's just what you have to concentrate on when you're teaching a class.
Justin, you're in the classroom every day, like Paul said.
Yeah.
Is it possible to move through all the content, the people, the events, the context, the timelines, without teaching doctrine?
I think the sly, subtle thing is you can teach about doctrine, but you don't proselytize. That's the biggest thing, I think. So like part of it's you as a teacher. So I don't tell the kids like specifically my religious beliefs, or politics too, but that comes up. That can come up sometimes. But religious beliefs are like what stands. Like they know I'm Christian, though sometimes they get like weird rumors. They start like, maybe he's not, maybe he's something else entirely different. They just do it for fun. Like one year we did Islam, and then they were like, Mr. Warren might be Muslim. Like he's teaching this in a way. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Anyway, but part of it's like, I think establishing like, okay, like I can never be like truly like a neutral person, obviously, because you have your perceptions and stuff, but I'm going to try to approach this fairly. So I try not to use first person language. Like we. It's like this group teaches this, emphasize these things, etc. And students also seeing like, okay, he's not going to, which not saying here, but like when I was growing up in the schools I went to, I had certain teachers who were like obviously very doctrinal, even in public school, like whether they're religious or not, and they would like hammer in stuff. And that I think creates a barrier with students because they say, oh, okay, well, he's probably saying this because he just really doesn't like Catholics or something or Baptists or whatever. So additionally, like I think for the teacher, having that, okay, he's going to be fair and respectful to anyone, to any whatever group it might be. And that creates, I think, some trust with the students because they know you're not going to like just take a hammer necessarily just for fun. You can pick on groups sometimes about certain things, silly stuff. They enjoy that. Baptists and chicken jokes go together. Fried chicken jokes go together. That's an easy one. And see, now I feel like I'm picking on Baptists. But any group has these kind of things you can pick on a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think establishing that. And then when you actually get to the subjects, teaching and being fair and giving the perspective. So like when we in medieval, we get to early church, we talk about some of the doctrines there. Like this is what this guy's teaching and take him to it. So for instance, we're going to read soon Athanasius talking about the incarnation and theosis. So they can come as we talk about the Eastern church and kind of the medieval, so they actually can see. And not me never saying like, hey, this is what you should believe and think. But this is how they're approaching this. This is how they're emphasizing.
And that's I think a very big, it's a great distinction when you're looking at curriculum, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're a homeschooler and you're looking at curriculum, we're going to teach, we always say we don't teach doctrine, but we are, as Dustin's pointing out, we're going to teach about doctrine because you have to know what the doctrine is to understand what the argument is.
And we are going to teach about certain common doctrines.
Right.
The triune God.
Oh, yes.
Christ is the deity of Christ, the bodily resurrection of Christ.
Yes.
We are going to be definitive on those. And those are doctrines.
But those are in the creed. But even things that are not in the creed, you have to understand the whole argument about investiture, right?
Oh, yeah.
And medieval history, you have to understand why is there the struggle between kings and the Pope on who gets to be the bishop, right? You have to understand the sort of the beliefs about authority, the doctrines of authority, in order to understand what in the world's even going on. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But then but depending on your tradition, when you teach that, you might say, you're going to present that if you're a homeschooling parent as this is either what our church did or this is why there need for reformation or whatever it's going to be, because you are the teacher that's kind of informing that. Whereas in a school like HLS where we are explicitly trying to bring sort of a diverse group together of Christians and trying to leave that sort of doctrinal fortitude to the church and to the family, we have to be more like Dustin in the way we,
because I can't teach the modern European history 11th grade. We do Renaissance, which read Erasmus a little bit. You already get a little bit of religious discussion, critique going on, but you can't do the Reformation without talking about doctrine. Like you just did politics, it'd be impossible. I think it's intertwined with each other.
I think it's possible. It's just hard to do, and it's more possible the older the person is. So like maybe that's a better thing left for college. But
high school and college is definitely better area.
You can say what the dispute is, and you can say what the differences are objectively. You don't have to go any further than that and argue for one side or the other, maybe. But I think even those, if you have the right environment, you can do it. But it is difficult.
Well, and the philosophy course that I taught, and we're finishing up the books now. I mean, I feel like it did come up at times where we'd be arguing about something, and a child or one of the students, 11th grader, would recognize that this philosophical concept would have implications on whatever they're going to hold in faith, right? And so then it became, okay, now as a philosophy teacher, I have to be able to hold in sort of tension and understand where you recognize, yes, this philosophical concept will in fact affect the way you're going to see the world. So you need to, can you defend that philosophical concept, right? I mean, that's what I was asking for. I'm going to teach you what the philosophers taught you. I'm going to teach you why they taught you that. or taught us that, and then I'm going to let you're going to have to, if you're going to argue against it, you've got to give a really compelling argument.
Because you guys are reading Boethius, right? So talk about...
Yeah, we're reading Boethius. I mean, Boethius is early, so he's not, I mean, but he's talking about predestination and forethought and not forethought, foreknowledge. Thank you.
I know what you meant. I got you.
You know, so yeah, you do have to struggle with that, right?
Well, the other thing is, because I was teaching Christian studies when we were developing our program, right? And I remember there were Protestant kids in the classroom, there were Catholic kids in the classroom. Sometimes they'd get into it, and you'd have to moderate. And then sometimes they would say something. This is funny. Is a student would articulate some position in their tradition, and it was not correct. And I'd have to say, actually, that's not your tradition. So they don't even know sometimes what. I mean, that's the problem with letting too much of that go on in the classroom is they don't know enough yet.
That's a helpful directive. That there really is such a skill in leading a child through what could be a thorny idea or concept, or talk about like some points in history that are quite complicated, leading them through that as they're trying to process, but they don't yet have the maturity and the experience that they might think they do.
And
so there's also that.
Even though I'm from one tradition, I'm explaining to somebody in another tradition what the position of their tradition is. And that's a weird position.
I've had to argue against my beliefs before
yes.
to try to give a balance. Like, I understand why people don't believe this, right? Here's the reasons they don't believe it, right?
And here's the argument. Here's the best argument for your position.
But also in teaching, what we do in logic class, what we do in philosophy class, we are giving them the skills to, I think, to really understand in a significant way, sort of, or to be able to have the skill to kind of look at their beliefs from a, not as Dustin puts it, you're never fully objective, but from a more objective point of view. And so while we aren't necessarily saying, okay, we're not a Baptist school or a Catholic school and teaching all of what a Catholic school would teach or all of what a Baptist school would teach, but we are giving them the skills for them to then go to their church, think about what they're hearing and say, okay, well then, and this is a doctrine, and then they've got the skills then to back that up. Right. Because they've learned to argue, they've learned to, how to look at some held belief, philosophical or, logical or whatever, and say, I need an abstract belief, and I need to be able to back that up. And that applies to their faith.
Yeah. And one of the things, having taught logic for a number of years, is you have to remind them, students, that you judge a position by the best argument for it, not by the worst argument you can think up, right? And so when you do get into these things in class, you have to remind them of that you're portraying the position you're arguing against in an incorrect way. That's not the best argument for that position. So that's another thing. Is just you in the process of teaching Christian studies, you're also giving them lessons in just the larger subject of how do you argue for your position? What's the best way to argue for your position? What are the things that you don't do? Don't mischaracterize somebody else's position, that sort of thing. So some of those are also helpful.
And that's been a good discussion on how we would approach it in the classroom. In our Christian studies books from Memoria Press, would you say those are more focusing on the Bible stories or characters or timelines, things like that when they're little, and then when they're older, it gives them the information they need?
It gives them information, right? But it's not giving them, like, the goal is, we're going to give you the fact of this is what this doctrine is, and do our best to not make a value judgment about whether that is, a good belief or an erroneous belief. And so, but as Dustin said, we are going to be teaching what that doctrine is so that you understand what the context is of whatever you're learning. Right.
And there's so much. I mean, you don't have enough time to cover what is common. You know, there's no need to go off into, different beliefs that different denominations have. You don't even have time for that. You got enough on your hand to just talk about the common Christian tradition.
One thing I would point out that this sort of diverse group of Christians all being in the same room, or if you're homeschooling, like having a co-op where you have it's a diverse Christian group and not a single one, is one time I was teaching and this was my first year, and before class even started, I want to say a student raised her hand and said, "Mr. Schaefer, what's purgatory?" Oh. And I did this kind of quick calculation in my head of they're going to hit Dante in a couple of years, like knowing what the belief of purgatory is, fine, okay. And so I kind of said, here's what it is. Here's why some people believe it. Here's why some people don't believe it. Go home, talk to your parents about it. And one of the students, or when I asked him first, I said, "How many of you know what purgatory is?" And this one girl, she's the best behaved girl in the class, but her hand shot up, didn't even wait for me to call on her. And she said, "Mr. Schaefer, I'm Lutheran. I don't believe in purgatory." Well, both of her parents worked at the school. And so I went to her dad afterwards and I said, "You're going to have an interesting conversation at dinner tonight. I just want to forewarn you." And his response was, "My wife and I both grew up in purely Lutheran circles. And so when we finally graduated high school and left the Lutheran circle, and that's when all of a sudden it was very hard for us." And he said, we wanted to bring our children up in a diverse Christian group so that the things that make us particularly Lutheran, we have a chance to talk to our kids about it before they leave the home. And I thought that was very wise. I mean, he was a Lutheran pastor too. And I thought that was very wise. And that's one thing that being in that diverse group gives. We have students that are very passionate about spreading their beliefs, and and so the other students are forced to then wrestle with that instead of just kind of sitting in this complacent, well, I'm Lutheran because I'm Lutheran. Well, no, you're Lutheran because you have these particular beliefs. Right. And being in that diverse group of Christians does actually help those, especially high schoolers, middle schoolers, high schoolers, figure out what they believe and hold the family's beliefs.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I hope that I'm not sure what Pia's context is, but if she's in some sort of like co-op or a school or a community, a diversity of experiences isn't necessarily something to be feared. It actually could be pretty refining.
Yes. As long as you as the parent are willing to engage with your student about and comfortable teaching what your tradition teaches.
I'd be curious to know what the classical education tradition, how has that approach been in terms of this subject? Have they taken the same approach we do? Is it
as the movement as a whole?
Right.
Well, there's diversity and unity there too. But I mean, there was a sort of, if you look back at particularly the 19th century, there was this sort of overarching mere Christianity type of approach, even in public schools, and actually in a much probably more holistic way than there is now. Certainly. So, I think we were a Christian culture. Whether we were actual Christian believers is another question, but we were a Christian culture until very recently. And so anywhere in America or Western Europe, certainly, just about we only had the school prayer decision come down in 1963. We need to remember that. Schools were still praying even after that, public schools. So we had this that was sort of imposed on everybody. There was a certain set of assumptions that everyone just sort of acknowledged, even if they didn't talk about it a whole lot. And that included schools. Right.
And so then the classical movement coming like nascent in the 80s, young in the 90s. And as it grew, a large part of that, the impetus was all Reformed Protestants. And now that the classical movement as a whole is extremely diverse. And we, with the companies that are out there that are putting out classical materials, you have some that are very specifically, tied to a denominational perspective. You have some like us that try to be more ecumenical, and everything in between. So I think the movement as a whole would say that there's space enough for all of us, because people from every tradition have embraced classical education and said, this is what we want. And so I don't think that classical education in itself is tied to a Christian tradition, what Martin was talking about. Like, it used to be just broadly accepted. And, but not everybody's ecumenical like us. Right.
And
in the classical world.
Yeah. I mean, the one qualifier would be, if you go back and you look at the history of education, it was specifically Christian, and the whole history of the late classical period, the medieval period in particular, which is where modern education really is invented, and everything is sort of derivative from that. That was specifically and doctrinally Christian.
That's
just part of the history of education.
To frame up where we're coming from.
Yeah.
But thank you. Dustin, any final words of encouragement for maybe people who are, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking of a teacher in a classroom who might have to teach something tricky. What might that subject be? It could be history. It could be something else.
Encouraging advice?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Trick question.
The way I said, something, I want to say something bad, something depressing. In all the years teaching, so one level, this is, this is, I don't say it's harsh and then encouraging. Maybe it is. We'll find out. Let me just talk and see where I go. You need to study. I learned quickly that because history, sometimes like with history studies, sometimes there's a branch of historical thinking, which is like, religion is dumb and we don't care to talk about it and it's pointless. And then the other perspective of, no, religion's important and it really affects things. You get like almost these polar opposites. And of course I lean more towards the left, which is, it's important regardless if you think it's true or not or whatever, like it affects humans. You shouldn't just ignore it or make fun of it or whatever. And it requires study. So like, I had to really learn about other denominations. I kept getting questions. And I'd be like, either I don't know or let me come back to you. And sometimes I was lucky, like if a kid like really knew his stuff and could answer something. That's happened a few times. So I'm always, sometimes, especially when I was young, I was like, does he actually know what he's talking about, or is he just really convincing, right? Because they may not know because they're kids still, as you kind of brought up earlier. So one level, it takes a lot of study. It might take you to read some books of those denominations or topics. It might mean even visiting maybe a few churches sometimes. I've been benefited from going to a couple of churches, just seeing how they worship services and things. Especially like if you're going to talk about a certain denomination or like Second Great Awakening. There's a lot of religious changes that happens with worship styles. And like my students, some of them don't grow up in more rural churches, so they don't understand like more rural worship styles. So I grew up with that, so I can explain that to them. So I think that's important. Second is, you're not going to know the answer to everything. And that's okay. And just say, I don't know, I need to look this up, or let me double check, or come back to you, and come back to them, because they will appreciate the follow-up and they will remember if they don't. Some of them will. Some of them will forget and just move on. And some of them will like bring it up later. So I think that's the two things I would say, because your question is like just teaching these doctrines. Yeah. And three, and the golden rule, I think, is the golden rule. If you're fair, when you talk about other denomination differences, if it gets brought up and you balance that and moderate it, the kids will see that and treat it the same way. Because I've seen like kids get heated sometimes. And over the years, especially the more I got better at that, the more I was better at establishing verbally or non-verbally or whatever we're going to talk about, we're going to be respectful. We're going to best arguments, like you said. We're not going to do the short change argument. That helps out the students because they see that model and like they know that they should follow it.
And one point we probably need to make is this is more important now. Actually educating in Christian studies than ever before because, and I'm saying this as someone who's been on both sides of the Protestant-Catholic divide, a lot of the education on this out there is not very good. It's not and it's not happening in the home in the way it used to. It's not happening in churches the way it used to. We have to do it in school. It's very important that we do this because we're not going to get it anywhere else. This seriously.
That's good. And that was wise and discerning advice for teachers and even teachers who are in the homeschool setting can practice that too.
And it benefits, like you mentioned that, Paul, like I think it's great. I mean, I've only ever, I suppose, either been in ecumenical or non-religious schooling, teaching, or like a secular school, but having like a variety of things, the kids benefit. Like I can see how sharper they are, have to wrestle with their beliefs. And I think it helps grow them, honestly, having that encounter.
And that's one argument I've kind of has been bouncing around my head is somebody who might say, well, if you're being ecumenical, you're just kind of presenting everything as relative and everything's equal and there's no actual truth. Well, no, I mean, that right there of the students, they're wrestling. We are very much not saying that there's not a truth that you have to hold that's specific. Yeah. We're saying that as an institution, as a school, we are not making that decision for you. But those students all know that they've got to make that decision. They've got to decide what those particularities are. And they're all influenced and I don't know. I can't think of a child who's gone off and done something other than what his parents did and the children that I know, right? But that's the prerogative of the family too.
I'm glad you pointed that out because we're not avoiding depth. We're not diluting anything.
Right.
Just for the sake of, not offending or because we want to completely we're
I mean there's more passionate arguments between students at our school than probably at any, at a Christian school that's denominational because you've got this mix and they're all trying to fight for their thing, right? Now you teach them to do it respectfully, you teach them to bring their backgrounds and stuff, but there's that argument of we're trying to present it all as equal. Once you see the students, engage with it, you realize that it's not what's going on.
And they've asked me like, which one's right? And it's like, well, I have an opinion. Like, I think that there's got to be something more right than others or whatever. But, you can always say partly like, that's not my job, or make a joke of, I want to keep my job. And they always like practically, they're like, I respect this, I understand. But also there's always the ultimate fail-safe of ultimately, this is a decision for you and your pastor and your parents, a conversation there. Like if you ask me, because someone asked me today or last week was like, Mr. Warren, purgatory, is it real? And this morning, actually, I walked in and I heard a student say, I just don't know if I can live with sola scriptura. And they were arguing and I was like, I didn't expect this at 7:45. This is like, we're like, where are we at in European? We're doing Prussia, Frederick the Great, and it's like months after the Reformation. And I was like, but some of these conversations linger.
They're still
thinking about it, yeah.
Wow.
And it's sharpening them, so.
It is. That's right. Well, that's a good note to end on, that it is refining for them. Thank you. Well, thanks for giving us your time on a school day, Dustin. And thank you, Martin and Paul, for joining us as well. And Pia, we're so glad that you sent this question. We hope it's helpful to you. And anyone else with questions, you can email us at podcast@memoriapress.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.